The goal of education is to prepare the next generation for a life that they will have when they grow up, including a life that's going to be in circumstances we don't know anything about. With change coming as fast as it is, you not only need to teach what former generations have learned about the world, but also ways of handling new circumstances, being flexible, problem solving, adapting to new situations and things like that.
I think teachers are very, very skilled at teaching children academics. They get a lot of preparation for teaching children academics, but they're often not as well prepared for arranging the environment to promote prosocial behavior. I think a lot of teachers are actually quite astounded by the number of behavior problems that they see in their classrooms, and no one has really taught them how to arrange environments to deal with those problems. One of the roles of teachers is to understand children's behavior and to be able to address those behaviors in effective ways. When teachers don't do that, we can't necessarily blame them, because if they haven't had the training to teach them how to do those things, then those are difficult things to learn on your own. However, a lot of teachers do learn their classroom management strategies largely by trial and error, and unfortunately, they tend to make a lot of errors when they do that.
Teaching, from my point of view, is helping another person learn more effectively, more pleasantly, or more quickly than they would learn on their own. I know that a lot of people think of teaching as just transferring information, but that's not teaching. If you do not have the student doing the kinds of things that you want them to eventually learn to do better, you're not going to have learning. It's that simple. You do not learn just by watching. Watching helps. A demonstration can help, but it will not teach you what you need to do. So you have to have active participation. And certainly, without active participation, the person is not going to have consequences that they generated. You can't generate a consequence if you're not acting.
The main thing is not getting a grade. It's getting to learn. So if you as a student are taught to measure or monitor your performance regularly, like every day, in an area that you are learning, math or geography or whatever, the fact that you see your performance increasing from day to day, that is the best reinforcer you're getting. And you don't need, after that, to know that you got a grade of 8 or 9 or 10 on a scale from 0 to 10, 10 being the best. You don't need to know. What you need to know is that you are increasing your skills from day to day. And compared to your performance from last month or last week, your performance is getting much better, and that should be then enough.
This is so important, I think, when you're trying to teach someone something. Move always with small increments, and I think it's the same thing when you're teaching a rat or a pigeon as when you're teaching a human something. Consolidate at each stage. Don't ever move on until you're sure, and don't ever tell the person, if you carry on like this, you'll never succeed. I mean, that is almost guaranteed to be counterproductive. You start off with very small increments, you reinforce them, and then you move on from there. The very last thing you want is the person to be lost, buried in misunderstanding, and seeing others move ahead while they're stuck back.
Programmed instruction was Skinner's shaping of verbal behavior. In shaping, you begin where the student is, something the student can do, and you give hints and prompts to solve some sort of problem, and then gradually the problems get more difficult, and each time he had them writing in answers, and then there's always the reinforcement that shows what the correct answer was, and the programs were edited so that students are almost always right. Very rarely do you get any errors, and it gradually brings you higher and higher and higher in your skill levels.
Headsprout, I have in my head that I want to write this little article called Headsprout, A Solution Before Its Time. Because we actually started Headsprout back in 1999 when the internet was just kind of relatively new. Internet penetration in schools was maybe at 60%. People didn't think that the internet was going to actually be ubiquitous the way it is now. And we built this program that was designed to teach children how to read when we couldn't see them nor hear them. So we were teaching them to read at a distance. We were measuring oral reading behavior or creating oral reading behavior by using mouse clicks. So it was a tremendous kind of technology hurdle that we had to overcome, but we knew that the science of behavior was robust enough that if we used everything we knew about behavioral instructional design, a content analysis of what reading behaviors really, really were, what it really took to decode, to be able to identify that letters make sounds, sounds go together to make words, words go together to make sentences, to be able to break down that reading repertoire, identify the objectives, break instruction down to the most meaningful steps, build a technology program that could both present and measure those meaningful steps and adapt automatically on the fly to whatever the learner was presenting. Again, remotely over the internet, continue to build a reading repertoire, provide information to parents about how learners, their children were doing, or to teachers or principals about how students or classrooms were doing, kind of all in this package, wouldn't have been possible without a science of behavior and the marriage of science of behavior and modern technology. I think technology offers a tremendous opportunity. And of course, technology's been around for a long time. So I think that what I'm responding to is the promise of digital and mobile technologies and internet-connected devices and sensors and the ability to monitor and measure behavior in real time and in all sorts of locations. The ability to have feedback immediately. So I think that technology offers a tremendous opportunity. It's not the solution. You still need a science of behavior. You still need to know how to arrange the contingencies. But the ability to use these tools to build social networks of prosocial, proactive behaviors, to provide feedback at an individual and in a larger scale, to be able to measure and determine what types of interactions work better at different situations. I think technology is a huge benefit to the science.
A contrived reinforcer is something that we need to put in place, something that wasn't already in the environment that we need to put into the environment in order to reinforce behavior, to increase the future likelihood of that behavior. A natural contingency of reinforcement is something that's naturally occurring in the environment that keeps behavior going. To give you a classroom example, a contrived reinforcer may be something like a sticker or a sweet, something that the teacher brings to the situation in order to reinforce and increase the future likelihood of appropriate behavior. A natural reinforcer would be something like feeling good because you've completed a good piece of work. Or being able to have more time to do something else because you finished your homework. So those are reinforcers that naturally occur in the environment as compared to those that we have to put in place.
If we're looking to change behavior, we add in these contrived or extrinsic reinforcers because we don't have a natural bridge to the reinforcers that occur naturally, automatically within the behavior. Headsprout is a perfect example. The natural reinforcer, the intrinsic reinforcer for learning to read is new knowledge. It's being able to share with others something exciting that you've read, being able to follow a recipe and make a tremendous new dinner for your family. Those are the natural reinforcers for reading. But when you're learning to identify that the letter B makes the B sound, you don't have direct contact with making dinner. You don't have direct contact with exploring new lands and a great new story. So you need a little bit of a bridge reinforcer to get you to make that match between the letter, that odd shape B, and the sound B, and how the B goes together with the L and makes blood, and you put all of those things together. I think that good behavior analysis is always looking towards that bridge, that progression towards what are the natural reinforcers that captures and sustains that behavior. And you start as soon as possible. And I think that that happens in good behavior analysis all the time. The problem is that because extrinsic reinforcers can be easy to deliver and they're quick and they're potent, they can be effective, especially at first. Sometimes people may rely on them too much and stick with them, too long, and we're not doing really good behavior analysis, when we do that. So, do I think that we could start out with some type of point system, token system, some types of other extrinsic reinforcers in building pro-social behaviors? Absolutely. Do we have an onus to move that over to the naturally occurring reinforcers as a blend, as a transition as soon as we can? Absolutely. And that's what we should do.
So we point out some of the natural reinforcers to help children try to understand some of the natural consequences of their behavior. And sometimes we get some freebies that come along. Like when we increase prosocial skills, kids tend to be more popular with their peers. They're included in games. They're able to interact with their peers more effectively, and that's also a very, very powerful natural reinforcer. So sometimes what we find is that these concerns that we have about children becoming dependent on contrived reinforcers are actually quite unfounded, because there are natural reinforcers occurring with peers and with other aspects of the environment that will often keep those behaviors going.
From my point of view, the absolutely best semi-contrived is kind of contrived and it's kind of not contrived. Consequence is a very clear indication of progress. There is a methodology called precision teaching that is based on rate of behavior, which is very sensitive to change. You may do something correctly today and tomorrow, but you will probably do it faster tomorrow. So if you want to see change, you're best using rate. When you do that, students get all excited about making their line go up. But it's also important that you pick something that they can do easily so that they can get this fluency. You don't want to give a task where they are not successful, because success is the strongest reinforcer of all. But seeing a line of progress is a way of seeing that you're being successful. Prosocial behavior, if you start having people attend to how others are responding, then you can start to have the happiness or pleasure of other people become a reinforcer. And when you do, then you get very pro-social behaviors out of anybody.
The strategies that we would teach teachers and parents to use are much the same. The whole idea of setting clear expectations and reinforcing the behaviors of children when they're doing the right thing. But there's also a piece of this that's around relationship building and delivering some of those positive things non-contingently, so that you are building a relationship with a child. You are teaching them that they're worthy, that they're worth something, that people will pay attention to them and people will like them and interact with them for being who they are. Certainly you want to make the rewards contingent on appropriate behavior, but it's not a bad thing just to have some non-contingent reinforcement as well, to establish yourself as a reinforcer. And this relationship building is a very, very important component to making reinforcement procedures work. Because if I'm a teacher in a classroom and I don't have a good relationship with a child, my praise is probably not going to be that meaningful to the child. So we really have to establish ourselves as someone that children want to be around and who they value in order for a lot of these procedures to work. So
Terra Kids was an idea. It's an imaginary website, one that we keep talking about building, but we haven't yet built. But Terra Kids was very similar to Headsprout, where it took lots of different concepts and principles from a science of behavior and put it into one package that would be highly appealing and very encouraging and user-friendly to a wider audience. And so that was the purpose behind Terra Kids. So it was this interactive website that was going to teach kids about sustainable behavior. But it wasn't really just to teach kids about sustainable behavior, but to build, through the child as the conduit, a community of sustainable behavior, where the child could help influence the parents' buying decisions based on the child's participation in Terra Kids, and anything from something as simple as earning Terra Kids points, or earning points for green purchases, to participating in community cleanup activities where they go to the local park and clean it up, or creating more green spaces, to involving business and vendors so that there's a reciprocal relationship between green products and green businesses and the families in participating in Terra Kids using those services or buying those products more. And so this whole system of interlocking contingencies, and I think that that's what behavior analysis both has to offer, and that's what makes it successful, is that we understand that it's not just one band-aid solution, it's not one simple response to something, but it's understanding a whole system of interlocking contingencies to make sustainable behavior change. Even though Terra Kids had a token reinforcement point system component to it, I also think it immediately brought in the social reinforcers, both from the parents telling the children, like, hey, this is great, it's good for the environment, this is a good thing to do, to the child's own feeling of, this is something, I know that this is important for the environment, for the planet, I feel good doing this. So you're building in those social reinforcers, both in the immediate family group and the larger community. So I think that any large behavior change project needs those different layers of reinforcers, and it's not that you move stepwise from one to the other, but they're all embedded simultaneously.
I think that behaviorology ought to be taught from first grade on. The best way to teach it is to have kids shape animals. I actually taught a class on animal behavior it was a private high school, and we used doves, and the amazing effect on the kids as they got their doves to peck a disc and then see that they could very easily teach it to peck yellow and not purple, and that sort of thing shows the power of the science, and it shows you can alter behavior only through reinforcement.
Why is behavior analysis not used in schools across the planet? I think there's never any one reason. There are multiple reasons. And one of the earlier reasons used to be that teaching is an art. It's not a science, and that when you bring science into teaching, that you kind of lose a bit of the humanity to it, or that it becomes too automated, or you're not getting at the core of what students should be learning, for learning's sake and all of that. And I think that all of those arguments are straw man types of arguments. I mean, you can effective teaching doesn't take any of that away. It enhances it. In fact, it makes a lot of those other things available. I think another reason, it's not just behavior analysis hasn't gotten into education. A lot of effective procedures and technologies have not gotten into the American education system. And I think that a lot of that has to do with everybody's been through education, everybody's been to school, everybody thinks that they know how it gets done. Education is fad-driven. People don't understand that there actually is a science to learning. People understand there's a science to medicine, and so they're willing to have the research and the careful controls and the analysis in medicine. And people, we need to learn that there's actually a science of learning as well, and we need those same careful analysis.
I go into a lot of schools and I see a lot of good practice. I'd say the majority of teachers that I work with, their hearts are in the right place. They really want to do the right things for children, but they often aren't given the tools and the skills that they need to make the impact that they're actually capable of making. So if we can just get people to understand a little bit more about human behavior, to understand a little bit more about contingencies, will not only improve the lives of children, will improve the lives of their teachers as well.
The classroom situation is one where you do have control over the availability of reinforcers, and indeed punishers for that matter. Whereas once you get out of the classroom, then you can't arrange society 24/7. And so you hope that indeed that the kind of situations that were found to be reinforcing pro-social behaviours were reinforced such that there is sufficient natural reinforcement for pro-social behaviours. It is good to see someone across the road who's struggling to cross the road. It is good because it feels good for you to do that, because your upbringing is such that you've been reinforced for pro-social behaviours. So then you just emit them, and they have their own, if you like, intrinsic reward. There is intrinsic reward in being good to other people. Part of our biological makeup, our biological makeup is such that we can be good and we can be nasty according to various setups, conditions in society. We can be good, we can be nasty, and which of those things can be reinforcing, can be rewarding, can be pleasurable, depending upon the background history we've had. We need a society in which pro-social behaviours have been reinforced, are pleasing, and it is displeasing to perform antisocial behaviours.